I'll talk through it. Sharon's going to jump in at certain intervals, but if anyone's got any questions, like Sue said, please put your hand up or pop it in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as we can. So what is a direct payment? A direct payment is a sum of money provided by local authorities or healthcare bodies to individuals who have eligible assessed care and support needs. This payment allows you to source and organise your own care or support services instead of receiving them directly from the local authority or the ICB. How can a direct payment be paid? So you can opt to have a self-managed direct payment account. It's a bank account that you open, you're in control of it, and it's solely used for direct payments. You can pay some money into it. So if you've got a financially assessed client contribution, you can pay that into your account. And you may also have something called a top up. So if you choose a provider or a support service that's way above your personal budget, which is absolutely your choice, there will be a top up for that. You can pay that into that account as well. You may have a very, very busy life, or you may not be really, really good with money and you are a bit nervous about running your own bank account. So there is an option to have what's called a holding account. That's where your funds are held by Enham Trust. And I will let Sharon have a little chat about what a holding account is and what you can do with a holding account.
Good evening, everyone. The holding account is a way for you to still be in control of your direct payment, but without the paperwork, really. You're still in control of your budget. You choose the providers you would like to have support you in whichever way is best for you. And again, if there is a client contribution or if you need to top up into that account, you can pay the money into that account. So you'll still control who is being paid, the hours they work, how much they're paid. And we do all of that through a form, which we can send you online or in the post, whichever works best for you. And at any point in time, if you want to know how much you have in your account, or you need to look at changing particularly self-employed providers, or if you want to do a rebudget for anybody that you're employing, you can come to us at any point and we will deal with those things for you. So it's a good way, and it's also a stepping stone for people who may be not so confident with money to actually gain the confidence to say, actually, no, I can do this myself, and we can then hand the direct payment over to you as a self-managed account. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that. No questions?
I'll move along then. Lovely, thanks, Sharon. So one of the things about having a direct payment is you have to have capacity, or the person running or managing the direct payment has to have capacity. That can be yourself, or you could nominate somebody. So you may well have capacity, but you don't actually want the hassle of running a direct payment. So you can nominate somebody. And for people that lack capacity, there is something called an authorised person. So that would be somebody that has power of attorney, for example, over that person's health and welfare and finances, and they could run the direct payment on their behalf. But there has to be this individual. We refer to them in the council as a responsible person or an RP. So if you have a discussion with a social worker or adult care practitioner, they may talk about the RP in terms of the person running and managing the direct payment. It can't be a member of staff, it can't be anyone employed by Somerset Council or a company that we're contracted with. So you couldn't ask a carer or a micro provider, for example, to be your responsible person. The only exception to that rule is if you are directly related to them. So they're related to you by marriage or birth, then that would be considered an exceptional rule. Is there any questions about capacity?
Can I quickly jump in, Bernie?
Of course you can.
If you're going to be a nominated person, a responsible person, an authorised person, when you open the bank account, because you will be taking control of the direct payment on behalf of that person, the bank account can be in your name because you are the one that's going to be managing that account. And that's something that quite often does get missed. So bear that in mind. Thanks.
Very good point. Oh,
Lucy, go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry, did you say can be in your account or can't be in your name?
If you're going to be the responsible person, the account can be in your name, and it's often easier if it is in your name, if you're going to be receiving the money and making the payments.
Okay, thank you. It is in our name, so that, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
so what are the benefits of a direct payment? There's the flexibility. You can choose how, when, and by whom your care or support is provided, allowing you to tailor the services for your specific needs. It gives you a lot more control. Direct payments give you greater choice and control over your care and support arrangements, enabling you to hire personal assistants or providers who are familiar with your preferences and your requirements. It also gives you consistency. One of the things, if a contracted agency sent in, for example, you may have different carers for each call visit and they may come at different times, which may not suit you and what you want to do. So if you hire your own personal assistant, you employ a personal assistant, or you hire a self-employed micro provider, you can ensure that that's the same person and they're available to you when you need them, providing you with that continuity and stability with your care provision. It also gives you empowerment. It's something that's quite important to our customers. They say they want the ownership of their choice, their control, and they want to be empowered. And running their own direct payment promotes independence to make those decisions about your support and care. They're also really good if you've got cultural or language preferences, because you can pick the provider that suits your cultural or language preference need. And lastly, but more, it is important, but it's one of the last things, cost effectiveness. By managing your own care, you're in control of your budget. And if you're very savvy and you find somebody that doesn't charge as much as somebody else, you'll get more care for your money. So it's quite cost effective and gives you that freedom to choose where you go and where you look for providers. Any questions around one of the benefits?
You have a
Joe.
question from Joe.
Hello. So when you've got care agreed for, well, it's offered 4 times a day, and I should have took it because Mum's just broke her hip. But when you've, sorry, 3 times a day care, so it's when that's been agreed, do you have to use it? Because I thought I had to use it on that timings.
If you've been assessed as needing 3 calls a day, you
Yeah.
can choose when you have those calls.
Okay.
And you've also got the flexibility to say, well, actually, we've got more family around in the morning, so we might need a bit longer this afternoon. So you might only have 2 calls that day, but you're having a longer call in the afternoon, and the funding that you would use across 3 calls is used for the 1 longer call because family were there in the morning. That's
Okay.
the
So
benefit of
I
a
can do
direct
that.
payment.
Okay. I didn't realise I could do that. I was told by the social worker thingy that I had to be in that time frame because that's the care and support plan.
It's
So
to do
okay.
with the eligible assessed need. So to
Okay.
put it into context, it is very flexible and you
Okay.
can choose when you use it. But if you've had a worker that's come in and said, we've in our professional opinion, we've assessed that you need
Morning.
at least 1
Lunch
call
time.
before 11 a.m.
Yeah.
and you need a call between 12 and 2 for lunch because it's to do with food and
Yeah.
nutrition, toileting, and then we need a call at 7:30 to 8:30 for bedtime routine or
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously the need is to get up, get dressed, have breakfast, and then lunch, nutrition, and then shower, whatever, go to bed. So we wouldn't expect you to be using it at sort of 4 o'clock in the afternoon to go out on a social visit if it was to do with maintaining nutrition and hygiene, for example. So it's to do with what's the eligible assessed need and what outcome are you trying to achieve. So as long as you're achieving those outcomes, what your goals are, you can flex when you use it during the day. But as long as it's on that eligible need that's within the care and support plan, that's fine.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. That answers my question. Lovely.
Anybody else got any questions around the benefits? Okay. So what can I purchase? So direct payments can be used for anything that is lawful and legal, providing it's meeting your eligible assessed care and support needs and achieves your agreed outcomes as stated within your care and support plan. So there is a list. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's quite a detailed list of what you can use your funding for. So you may choose to hire or employ a personal assistant. So that's somebody that you do employ. The employed carers we refer to as personal assistants, and you or the responsible person would be the employer. You do have to adhere to employment law, but NM Trust are on hand to help you every step of the way with that. You're not left alone to be an employer. They can also run the payroll for you. I'll get Sharon to talk a bit more about that in a bit. You can hire a self-employed carer or micro provider. Many of you may have heard of micro providers across Somerset. They're still a carer. They're still referred to at times as a personal assistant, but they are self-employed. So you're not their employer. You're not beholden to employment law with a self-employed carer. You may have a CQC registered agency. So it's not one that we contract with. This is one that's private out there on their own, but they do have to be CQC registered if you're using a care agency. You might use it to access your community, and that could be a way of getting out to the community, using facilities in your community, or paying a PA or your carer to get you out and about in the community. Social activities, as long as it's achieving the outcomes. Or short breaks or respite care if that's what you've been assessed as requiring. Sharon, do you want to talk a bit about personal assistance and if somebody is an employer?
Right. At NM, we now do webinars. So we do an employer webinar, a payroll webinar, and what we call a SEPA, a self-employed PA or a micro provider webinar. With these, it just goes through all of the things that you need to make sure are in place. It goes through the employment, setting you up as an employer. We do budgets, and as Bernie said, we can also run payroll, which you don't have to pay for. Somerset Council pay for that. So although you would still be self-managing, you let us have the hours for the PAs once we've got them set up, and we do a form for that with you to set you up as an employer, a form for the employees where we take all of their details. We do a budget on the number of hours they're going to be working and tell you how much you can pay them as a gross hourly rate. We will run the payroll for you, and we have an online platform for that. If you can't do online, we can send pay slips to you in the post, and that will tell you how much you need to pay your employee and how much you need to pay HMRC. Anything else I can cover quickly? Have I missed anything, Bernie? You're on mute.
Always one. I think that's the basics really surrounding employment. I can see Joe's got her hand up.
Sorry, I'm going to be a pain, aren't I? So when you
fine.
say paying HMRC, if you've got a managed account,
Holding account.
That's different, isn't it? Holding account.
Yeah.
Sorry, it used to be called a managed account, didn't it?
It did. It used to be.
Yeah,
we've called
sorry,
it a holding account purely because we don't manage the money. That's still your job. We hold the funds on your behalf. So that's why we got rid of the idea of a managed account, because having an account background, if you're managing it, you deal with it. You make sure everything's in budget. You make sure everything's right. But it's still your control. If you've got a holding account, yes, we run the payroll. We will pay the PA. We pay HMRC, any tax, national insurance due. We will give you insurance information so you can pick your insurance provider to have employer's liability insurance, contracts of employment, which are necessary to be in place before an employee starts. And we'll go through and cover all of that with anybody that's going to become an employer, whether they're self-managing or holding account.
You know, you meant, sorry to be a bit of a pain, but you know, you
No.
mentioned that you did the webinars. How do I get
Yeah.
access to them webinars? So it'd be
Right. Hopefully at some point somewhere you can have my email address, and you can email me and I can give you the dates and we can get you booked in.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem at all.
We'll ensure we
If,
do that at the end for you.
yeah, if anybody wants to attend any of the webinars, you are more than welcome. All I need to know is an email address and I can send you some details of dates and times.
If you'd like to put your email address in the Q&A section, I'll leave it in the in-review part, so no one else will be able to see your email address. It will remain anonymous from anyone else apart from me, and I'll send that over to Sharon. So just pop it in the starter discussion, or just pop it in ask a question in the Q&A section at the top of your screen.
Thanks, Ella.
Okay. So can you use a direct payment for equipment or for transport? So the Care Act 2014 is quite clear. You can absolutely use it for equipment or transport. However, local authorities can add a caveat to that clause. It's in the shoulds and woulds section as opposed to the musts and will. So what we say at Somerset is, yes, you can use it to purchase equipment, but only if we cannot procure that through our contracted provider. So the worker that's working with you should go into Mediquip if it's a piece of a medical equipment, for example, and see if it's in the catalogue there. So if we can procure it through our contracted methods, that is the route that we should go down through first. But if we can't procure it that way and we can purchase it through a direct payment, absolutely, you have the choice of that. And it's the same with transport. So if you have any mobility benefit and any other benefit you receive from the council, such as a PIP, then you must use your mobility benefit first before you use any funding on any type of transport. Are there any questions about the equipment and transport? Hi, Lucy.
I will unmute you, Lucy, if you're struggling.
Sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry. Can you use direct payments to pay a family member to care?
You're jumping ahead of my slides. We're going to cover that in just a moment.
Okay, all right, that's fine, thank you.
Not a problem. I did see a second hand up, but I'm not sure where.
Diana.
Hiya.
Hi. When you say you've got to exhaust those other benefits like PIP, which sounds quite reasonable, but in practice, do most of the people have PIP and therefore use it? Is what Somerset Council pays for in this context on equipment and transport small or large? I've got no feel for it at all, and I just wondered.
Most people have some form. If they're coming in through the care system, they also have some other type of benefit that covers mobility.
Yeah.
And when workers ask me for example, I always say, let's say we've got somebody assessed as needing 5 days daycare and they attend Monday through Thursday and they're using their mobility benefit to pay to get to that activity or that placement. And they still have that outstanding need on the Friday, but they have no more mobility money left in their benefits. We would allow them to use the DP to get there because it's still an outstanding need. But we do look to our in-house provision first before we go to the direct payment to pay for transport.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome.
Joe's got a question.
Sorry, because attendance allowance isn't got the mobility element, has it? But
attendance allowance, I don't think has, no.
No, it hasn't. I was only asking because the social worker suggested mum go to a day provision, but she's housebound, so it's not relevant for me anymore, but it might be relevant for someone else in this group. So that's why I just thought I'd say.
No, good question. Good question. Any other questions about transport or equipment before I move on? So what can't it be used for? Anything that is illegal or against the law, ongoing residential placements or any nursing care, health needs that would be paid for by the NHS, buying personal care from an unregistered care agency, so they're not CQC registered, gambling, which includes lottery, tickets, bingo, raffles, repaying debts, which includes mortgages or fuel arrears or loans, any financial investments, household bills, for example, rent, gas, electricity, water or council tax, your day-to-day household bills, so you can't buy food or drink or cigarettes, tobacco, that kind of thing, and non-statutory liabilities, such as if you wanted to tip your staff or give them a bonus, you can't use the funds for that. Any questions about this slide before I move on? Lucy?
So can it be used to pay family members for care?
That's on the next slide.
Oh, sorry, I'm still there.
It's all right. We will
Sorry.
cover it, and if you've got any extra questions when we're there, by all means,
Okay.
shout them out. Not a problem.
Okay.
Joe's got a hand up.
Joe?
Sorry, I'm waiting for a reassessment because unfortunately we've had well, I nearly lost mum the other day. So we're waiting on reassessment because I turned down the fourth element of the care, the nighttime one, but I wish I hadn't now because mum broke her hip. But I was trying to enable mum, not disable mum, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Anyway, so what's happened? I just wondered because unfortunately my mum is suddenly needed nighttime needs. Is there anything that's eligible under direct payments for nighttime needs or not?
The answer is yes. I might defer to the two social experts on the call because even though I'm really good at direct payments, I'm not a trained social worker. So I might pull on Nikki or Sue's expertise for that question.
Hi, it's Sue Waring here, and Nikki, my colleague, sitting next to me. It depends on the assessed need. So in other words, if your mum is deemed as having overnight needs, there could be some health element of that. Or it could be that there are different ways of meeting mum's needs. So in other words, if your mum can't get out of bed to go to the toilet. I know that as much as people don't like to hear this, there is incontinence care that can be used throughout the night. It's also making sure that if your mum's got capacity, whether she can use a Piper Lifeline to call for assistance. It might be that an OT needs to be involved to look at a suitable bed and suitable equipment. So it's really quite it's not a straightforward yes or no.
No, that's okay. I understand that.
Yeah.
Because I work in the care sector anyway. Yeah. But unfortunately, it's medical, a lot of it at the minute. And we're not sure, and dementia, so it's both. But she cannot spatial awareness to the commode properly, so she needs someone here. She's actually a bit of a miracle. She's unusually, they only provide 2 nights through D2A normally, roughly, but I've spoke to Emily Furbrooke and established that wasn't quite right, and so she's had more than she needs. Unfortunately, I had to sleep in the chair last night because so sorry, a personal sort of situation, so I'm trying to understand it because, and I've now been provided with an alarmed mat and we're trying that, but she happened to get out the other side of the bed at the wrong alarmed mat side last night, so that was very unhelpful.
Perhaps you need 2 mats then, one each side. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the alarmed mat didn't work anyway. It's broken, so that's why I had to sleep in the chair last night. So they've just come out to fix it now. So hopefully I'll get a night's sleep. But I am conscious that she's got out the other side, so I may not sleep. So interestingly, but is that possible to have 2? Can you get 2?
You should be able to, or you might be able to reposition the bed along with the OT support or the support you've got going in to see if your mum can be stopped getting out of bed the other side.
Fortunately, the bed's been moved 4 times, and they think this is the best because of the 2 rails can't go anywhere in the room unless she's got it in the middle of the room. So that means she's both sided. So sorry, don't want to take up everyone's time because I know this
Okay.
is a short thing. So
Yeah.
that's good because it gives me the opportunity to talk when I have the updated care needs assessment. So
Yeah. So, yes, and there's also an in-bed monitor as well that can be gathered.
that's what he's told me to ask for, but he's told me not to tell him that he's asked me to ask for.
Could I jump in because I think Alison's been waiting for a little while to ask a question. So would it be okay if we move on to Alison now?
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, thank you. It was just a quick question to say, or to ask really. So for young people, kind of like 18 plus that are kind of in that transition-y phase, where perhaps they aren't looking for care agencies or CQC registered providers, but also like micro providers don't fit. Can people still use their direct payments then to maybe work with an organisation like us, which I'm from Autism Somerset, to provide coaching for those young people to get those skills and to access the community? Does that kind of sit differently, or are you doing a different?
No,
you're doing another slide
no,
on that?
no, they absolutely can choose to do that. It all falls back to what is the assessed eligible need and the
Okay.
outcome. And then they would have that discussion either with their family and their worker, allocated worker, to make up the support plan. And if using your organisation is absolutely going to meet that young person's need and achieve what they're trying to achieve, then absolutely they can choose a direct payment to do that.
Amazing. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any other questions, or shall I move along to paying a family member? Oh,
sorry, one quick one.
historic.
Sorry, no, it's one quick one. If so, at the moment, unfortunately, Mum's had a crisis. Okay, so she's been in hospital twice and had 6 ambulances. If so, I'm temporary here. What happens if I had to remain here? What happens with my care and support? Do I lose that?
As in, do you have assessed care needs as well?
No, I meant for my mum. Sorry, the carers that she's got at the moment. The direct payments in place at the moment. So
No.
say I had to move.
Shall I answer it, Bernie? I mean,
Yeah, you can
basically,
do.
yeah, I mean, if your mom's got assessed care needs and it's either through a direct payment or a commission service, then no, your mom wouldn't lose it. You would be a bonus to your mom being there. So she would still have those care needs that we could provide the care for.
I think Joe may have frozen.
Yeah. Okay.
Hopefully that's answered that, Joe. I'm going to move along because it's we've only got 15 minutes left. So paying a family member. So the Care Act is very, very clear on family members being paid carers. A family member that lives inside the same household will only get authorization under exceptional circumstances. So the Care Act does say that close family relatives living in the same house should not be paid carers unless there is an exceptional reason for that. By exceptional reason, I will give a few examples, but it is independent. It's dependent on the specific situation for that individual. But some of the reasons are you may have a young adult or a young person or even a middle-aged person that's profoundly living with learning disabilities or learning difficulties, and they can only communicate in a certain way and only the family know how to interpret that communication. We would consider that as an exceptional circumstance because the individual might not be able to get the help that they need because they can't communicate that, but they could to a relative. And you may have some religious reasons. Some cultures will only have female direct line relatives being able to do personal care, for example, because of the religious reasons. That's an exceptional answer. But sadly, if someone says, well, I want my husband, wife, partner, relative to do it because I like them, that wouldn't be considered an exceptional reason. There would have to be a specific circumstance, but everybody has the right to ask for that, but it would be discussed with your allocated worker and quite possibly an advanced practitioner to see if there is an exceptional circumstance, and then it has to go through our peer forum. So a group of people would discuss the reasonings and then give authorisation, because the Care Act does say it shouldn't be somebody living in the same household. A family member that lives outside the household is allowed to be a paid carer, but we still ask that it's agreed through our peer forum by a service manager. And the reason for that is there is usually a conflict of interest in paying a relative. I can't say this is for everybody, but this is me being totally transparent and talking of 20 years experience. I have seen families broken apart because dynamics change when a relative starts providing care as a paid carer. It's almost like a power trip. It's the only way I can say it. And the poor cared for person has lost their voice. They've lost their independence. The paid for carer who is related to them has kind of taken over. So there is a risk. So we want to make sure that we have these discussions with you before we allow somebody who doesn't live in the household. But they are allowed by the Care Act, they are allowed to be a paid carer if they live outside the household. We just want that conversation with you so that everyone knows of the risks that happen if you are a paid carer and you're related. So I'm hoping that's clarified. But if you've got any questions, please do ask.
Lucy, you've got a question?
Yes, very quickly. So we look after our daughter, have direct payments. We have employed and self-employed carers. We, as her parents, take her away for a holiday. So are you saying that we could be paid? We would not expect to be paid, but if it was for a long time, could we pay ourselves for doing that or not?
Do you live in the same house as her, or is she in a separate
No,
house?
she does not. We have set up a house for her.
You can request it. Again, that will be a conversation to have with the allocated worker and quite potentially the advanced practitioner, and it would go through our peer forum as well.
Who's an allocated worker?
So if you come to us and you say you wanted to speak to a social worker, everybody in the system comes under a team, a locality team. So we don't have workers allocated all the time. So if you needed an assessment or a review, or you had questions like these, you would go through to our triage, and then if a worker needs to be allocated, it would go through the process of having an individual worker allocated to you to have that discussion.
Okay. I mean, sometimes it does happen where we have to do shifts. I don't live in the household, but sometimes we do. I wouldn't expect ever to claim off the direct payment, but as we're talking about it, was asking.
It's a potential, but of course you have to think of the fact it would be seen as an income. So if you're not providing care for anybody else, you couldn't do invoicing and be self-employed. You'd have to be employed, which would mean that there would have to be a separate employer, because you can't be employer and employee.
No.
So if you're the responsible person, chances are you wouldn't be authorised to be a paid carer, because you can't be both.
Right.
You'd have to be one or the other, but it's a bigger conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else got a question about family? No. That's kind of the end of all the slides. The last slide here, I'm assuming you can all have access to these slides. Are all our information sheets that are on our public webpage to do with direct payments and the Care Act. So that's what that last slide's about. But just a few minutes to have a little think. I'll let Sharon come and talk a bit about Enham Trust and the work that they do in supporting people. What kinds of things you can ask them to support you with.
Right. Just a little bit of background on me. I used to work for the council. I moved over to the dark side of Enham, as they call it, 11 and a half years ago. So I've been dealing with direct payments for about 15 years now. At Enham, you get allocated an advisor when your referral comes through to us from the council. So your social worker does the assessment. That goes through to the direct payments team at County. They pass the referral to us. We get that referral. It's very important, if you are going to be a responsible person, that you make sure that the social worker has got your details. One of the hiccups we have is we don't always have the responsible or authorised person's details. That just hangs up your direct payment and us making contact. So once we've got that referral, we will contact the responsible person or the client, and we'll have a chat with you, check that you've had the direct payment explained to you, go through any questions you might have, and then if it's possible for you to do so, we will book you on to a direct payment webinar. They last around 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how many questions get asked. It's done similarly to this, but there isn't somebody controlling the question and answer box. You put your question in, and at the end of the webinar, we'll go through all the questions that are in there. You are anonymous throughout the webinars as well, so nobody can see or hear you, because that makes people a little bit more comfortable. Not everybody wants to be seen or heard on screen. During that webinar, we ask some questions. It's a short poll or a short quiz, just to make sure that everybody's understood everything that we've been presenting in the webinar. Once you've attended the webinar, we send all of the documents out. We use a secure online platform called DocuSign. You receive those documents. We complete the majority of that document. You read it and you make sure you're happy with it. You then sign it. It goes straight back to the council and we receive a copy, and the council will then set that up. We will offer you, if you know that you're going to become an employer, we will offer you those webinars for employers and for payroll. And along with those, you get a support pack, which gives you information on contracts, insurance companies, your regulations as an employer, what laws you have to abide by. Equally with the self-employed PA one or the micro provider one, all the things you need to check for. Have they got public liability insurance? Have they registered with HMRC? Do they pay? Do they provide care to other people? Because one of the issues we have, lots of people will say, well, I'm self-employed. But if you only care for one person, you would be deemed as an employee. So we go through all of those issues with you. We are there to support you from as soon as we get that referral. Either your allocated advisor, or if they're away, another advisor within the team will be available to help and support you. Approximately 3 to 4 months in, we do an audit for the council. So for that, we request copies of the bank statements and any invoices that you've paid if you're self-managing. If it's a holding account, we will get that information off of our system. We do that first audit and we always chat to you and say, we've done the audit, everything's great. Or if there's anything that needs any adjustments, any self-employed PA invoices which aren't quite right, aren't showing the information we need, we will discuss that with you and send that return into the council. From that point on, you hand over to the council and they will request your audits as and when they would like to see them, and they will always tell you exactly what they're looking for. Having said that, once we've done the audit, your class is being signed off, but we never sign any clients off. We're always there for everybody for as long as you need us or as long as your direct payment runs. And you can ask any questions. We will do our very best to help you in whatever way we can. And if we don't know an answer, we're not ashamed to say we don't know, and we'll go and find it from somebody that does know.
If I had to move in with Mum, that was the question I asked when I got thrown out. I don't know yet. I don't know if I have to give up my job or not, or whatever. But if I do, how does that stand for the carers that have been consistent and very important to my mum? And at the moment, we're needing a bit of 2 people support at the moment because Mum keeps going out, so passing out. So Yeah, I just wondered how that stands. Would that I be in a position to still have that support, or would I not? Would I
Yeah.
lose that support?
Yeah.
No,
No.
you'd still
could
have that
have
support
it.
because your
Yep.
mum's got that eligible assessed need.
Need.
You're just an
Okay.
extra pair of hands in the house, but the carers
Yeah.
will still be in situ.
I'm
Yeah.
very
That
grateful for
wouldn't
that
get
'cause
stopped because you've moved in.
that's
No.
been one of my stresses. Okay, so thank you for that. And the second thing, sorry, oh, what was that say? God, I didn't know. I've made a mistake along the way because I didn't have the contract side of things. So, and I wasn't told that in the beginning, Sharon. So I'm working on that at the moment to sort all of that out. So, that thing, and I still get in a muddle about holidays because I never know how much holiday my employed carer has got, if that makes sense, and I have to keep sending an email in, can you tell me what's left, that sort of thing. So I get a bit muddled with that. Is there not a way, because they used to put on the bottom of the pay slip the holiday entitlement, but they don't do that anymore?
No, that's been changed. It is something that gets raised quite frequently, and we do keep raising it, saying it's so much easier if people have it on the bottom of a payslip. You then know whether or not your PA's got any holiday left to take, and if so, how much.
Yeah,
but as I say,
it's
I
not
know
on there anymore, is it?
No, and I know it's a bit of a
No.
nuisance, but for the time being, I'm
Sharon
afraid it
looks
is a
as though
case
she's
of an
frozen.
email.
Just keep emailing. Okay, thank you for that, because obviously
Yeah.
it's coming up to March and I'm
Yeah.
thinking about
Yeah.
that person needing time off and me having to find cover. The
Yeah.
one other question, sorry, I'm being a real pain, I'll be very quick. Hospitalisation. So unfortunately, we've been in the situation where mum has been in a few times. I'm trying to retain the carers that I've got because that's really important for consistency and don't want to lose them. Last year, mum has had 3 Christmases in hospital, but last year I lost a carer, and I'm trying not. Mum's out home now, so that's fine. But I'm trying what happens in that situation.
So for employed carers, we don't stop the direct payment unless we know the person in receipt of the funding is going to be in hospital for longer than 4 weeks. So employed carers will have a clause within their employment contract about retainment. So if it's coming close to the 4-week mark, we would expect the responsible person to have those conversations with their carers. That there could potentially be a redundancy situation if they're no longer required, or if they haven't worked long enough, just to give them notice, they would be entitled to notice pay. If it's a self-employed carer, chances are they will have a retainer clause within their contracts, terms of service, whatever they're calling it, which can be anything from a day up to 28 days. They are self-employed, so they stipulate that length of time, even though we try to get it as short as possible. But again, one of the things about being self-employed is they're meant to be looking for employment all the time. So once you're thinking, well, actually, mum might be in hospital for 8 weeks, it's up to you to have that conversation with them to say, look, I can only pay your retainer for 2 weeks. I'll have to chance whether you're still here or not.
Do you know any hospitals that keep you in for 8 weeks?
No.
Sorry,
It is rare.
I'm not being funny. But so what happens if mum goes into hospital and sorry, she's a readmission. She's one of them. So unfortunately, so she comes out and she's readmitted. Yeah, because it's
in terms of what?
So the timing, because that gaps happens. So basically, what happened with mum is she broke her hip on the 26th of she's vascular dementia and complex health as well, but she broke her hip on the 26th of December. Then unfortunately she came out. She had a hypo at home, and I managed to sort that. So I've had 6 ambulances in the last 2 months, and so she had a hypo, and then she's then ended up back in hospital because she caught the leg in the frame and she was trying to lift her frame into bed and couldn't get it into bed, so
It's 4
damaged her
weeks
leg.
from each admission.
From each admission, that's
so
okay.
we don't add weeks up if there's 3 or 4 days in between.
Yeah, so
but
she went
obviously
in
I
second time
would
only
expect
for 2 days.
I'd expect a conversation with staff on the ward with adult social care if this was going to be something that meant actually maybe being at home is not the right environment, which is a painful conversation. I totally get that. But at some point that
it is going to be a conversation,
conversation will happen. because obviously if somebody continues to fall at home, we have to think of what's the best for that individual to keep
Oh,
them
she's
safe.
not. She's not a faller normally. She's only fallen twice in the last 7 years. But yeah, if she was a faller,
that's
so, yeah.
brilliant. But that's what
Yeah.
we would do if it
Yeah.
got too often in terms
Yeah.
of, because we can't keep paying a micro provider and retain their
When-
services indefinitely. So at some point there will have to be a conversation that you may need to give them notice and then chance whether they're still around and hire them back, or if they've moved on, find a new carer. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Thank you, Jo.
Thank
I'll
you.
move on to Diana now, please. Diana, do you want to take yourself off mute? And then, okay. Thank you.
Ever so quick and a step away
That's
from
all right,
care. It's really the employment law. I've just stopped being a qualified paralegal, and a few years ago I used to do evening employment law clinic at Citizens Advice in the evenings, and boy, did I have to have that specialist employment law backup. Does NM have the same thing? Because I know how complicated it is. It's a long time since I've done it, but do you have to have specialist legal advice within the trust, or do you get it from outside?
If anybody is going to be an employer, you have to have employer's liability insurance. We always advocate that you go for what we class as a gold standard. So I think they're 85 and 90 pounds. With that, you get a full legal backup system with the insurance company. They will provide correct contracts of employment. They will deal with any issues around disciplinary, redundancy, etc., etc. And no, I have a part qualification from years ago. I certainly wouldn't want to give anybody any professional advice on it.
Exactly. Thank you. That's answered that. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Lucy, one more quick question, and then we must then wrap up and close up because we are running over. So thank you, Lucy. If you've got one quick question, because I can see your hand up.
It was just in reply to Diana's. We use fish insurance, which we use the top policy, and with that we get HR with Peninsula, and they are fantastic, and I use them a lot. But I didn't realise that NMU provided, but maybe you don't, because employment law is, I mean, they are fantastic. Peninsula.
Thank you.
We can give you the basics, but we always direct you to the insurance company.
Yeah,
they are professionals.
They are extremely good, and they I have learnt a lot along the way.
Thank you, Lucy.
Okay.
Right, I'd like to now sort of bring us to a close. I'd like to say a really big thank you to Bernie and Sharon for their presentation, and I hope that you all learnt something and enjoyed the webinar.